Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to talk about the differences and the similarities between someone who is a covert narcissist and someone that has a dismissive avoidant attachment style. So I recently made a video just on dismissive avoidant attachment, and I did touch in that video a little bit on the differences between someone who has a dismissive avoidant or a DA attachment and someone who is a narcissist or a covert narcissist. And that video actually got really long. I think that video is like 15 minutes long or something, and there was actually a lot more that I wanted to say on that topic, but I didn't want the video to get too long because I know a lot of people don't like watching long YouTube videos. So I wanted to make a follow-up just talking about dismissive avoidance and narcissism, in particular covert narcissism, because this is the one that kind of tends to get muddled and confused with the dismissive avoidant attachment style. And I can see why, as there are quite a few overlaps between these two constructs. However, there's also a lot of differences. Before I dive too deeply into the content, I want to say welcome if you're new here. My name is Jenna. I'm a psychotherapist that specializes in relationships, especially toxic relationships. And I have a bunch of videos on this channel addressing things like narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and codependency. Really love it if you hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to my channel for new content every week. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, as it really does help support my content. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the difference between personality theory and attachment theory. Because when we talk about these things, we're actually talking about two different psychological ideas. Personality is all the things that make you you. They're all the personality traits. You can be an extrovert, you can be an introvert, you can be outgoing, you can be shy, you can be serious, you can be not serious at all. You can kind of think of all of these traits kind of existing on like a slider. So we can kind of slide, and there's different variations, different combinations. They can be in the middle, they can be more extreme. When we're talking about narcissists, we are talking about personality. So narcissists have very extreme personality traits that fit under narcissistic traits. Narcissistic traits are something that we all have. There's different varying levels of narcissism. There's, what's kind of more considered like a healthy narcissism, like our self-confidence or our ability to think that we can do things well or that we matter in the world. So a narcissist is someone that has extreme traits that are composed of narcissistic traits. And if you want to know what those are, I'm not going to get into that in this video, but I do have another video that just talks about the traits that make a narcissist, and I will make sure that I leave that linked in the description box below for you guys. So on one end, we have personality, composed of basically who someone is. On the other hand, we have how people attach to other people in interpersonal relationships, and that is what we're talking about when we talk about attachment theory. Someone who is dismissive avoidant or has a dismissive avoidant attachment style has one of the three types of insecure attachment styles. The three types are preoccupied anxious, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant, which is kind of a combination of anxious, preoccupied, and dismissive avoidant. So when we talk about dismissive avoidant, we're talking about someone that has one of these insecure types of attachment. And this is usually pretty rooted in early childhood. However, it doesn't have to be. It can develop over time with life experiences. But usually we learn how to attach to people based on how we attach to our primary caregivers in early childhood. With insecure attachment as a whole, usually there was some type of disruption in the way that small children, babies, infants, learned how to attach to their primary caregiver. This is usually the mother, it doesn't have to be. And they learn how to get their needs met different ways than someone that has a secure attachment style. Secure attachment is the healthiest form of attachment. That those people are really good with relationships. They're good with meeting their own needs, and they're also good with meeting the needs of other people. And if you are looking for more information on dismissive avoidance, I do have a video, and I'll link it down below for you to check out more traits about just dismissive avoidance in general. So on one hand, we have personality, and on the other hand, we have attachment. Where it can get a little bit complicated is that sometimes a narcissist can have a dismissive avoidant attachment style. They're different, but they can occur in the same person, because one's personality and one's how we attach to other people. And a person can have both. A person can have both of these things going on at the same time. So they're separate constructs, but they can occur together. And they don't have to occur together. Someone can be dismissive avoidant and not be a narcissist. A narcissist can exist and not be dismissive avoidant. Actually, in my experience, most of the narcissists that I've known, they usually tend to kind of sway more towards either a preoccupied anxious or a fearful avoidant attachment style. And this is really due to needing narcissistic supply. Narcissists are not capable of validating themselves. They can't give themselves their own supply. They require other people for that. So they need other people to get that need met. And people that are more dismissive avoidant, they're not really, they don't necessarily need other people. Actually, the opposite, they kind of tend to push other people away. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But if a narcissist is going to have a dismissive avoidant attachment, it probably is more common in a covert narcissist because of a shared personality trait between the two. So this gets into introversion. On average, not a rule, but on average, both covert narcissists and people with dismissive avoidant attachment styles do tend to be more introverted. This is a common shared characteristic between both of those things. People who are introverts in general typically need more alone time to recharge their batteries, are not comfortable being around people 24/7. Covert narcissism is typically called an introverted form of narcissism, and dismissive avoidance usually because they tend to dismiss other people and they're okay being more alone, definitely tend to be more introverted too. And there are introverts that don't fall into either of these things, just putting that out there. Just because you're introverted doesn't mean you're a narcissist or a covert narcissist, and definitely doesn't mean that you're dismissive avoidant either. But in general, this is a trait that these two things do tend to typically share. One difference between covert narcissists and people with just a dismissive avoidant attachment style that we see is their approach to vulnerability. Dismissive avoidants in general don't like vulnerability. It's something that tends to be relatively scary to them, makes them very uncomfortable. This is kind of what they try to avoid more than anything. Covert narcissists, on the other hand, actually can come off as being quite vulnerable. Another name for covert narcissist is a vulnerable narcissist. In the mind of a covert narcissist, if they can be open, if they can be vulnerable, they'll attract more people in. Like, you'll be able to relate better to this person. Something that we know about narcissists is that they don't really have a sense of self. So this vulnerability is more of a manipulation technique. It's not really truly who they are. Narcissists don't really actually reveal who they truly are. The narcissism is a cover for that. Dismissive avoidants don't like vulnerability because usually they associate vulnerability with negative emotions. So usually because they weren't made to feel safe when they were vulnerable, usually from a very young age, so therefore they try to push it away because them, vulnerability might mean rejection. It might mean that they're not going to be accepted by other people if they show people who they actually are. They might feel that vulnerability makes them weak. They might think that it will lead to a lack of privacy, freedom. A lot of different ideas kind of go into this whole fear of vulnerability. So covert narcissists, they use kind of a false vulnerability to draw people in or make people feel sorry for them or whatever it is that they're trying to control or manipulate. People with dismissive avoidance tend to push away vulnerability. They avoid situations where they're made to feel vulnerable. They have really struggled to open up. On the topic of pushing away, another common shared trait between covert narcissists and people with dismissive avoidance is something that we call stonewalling, or it can be called the silent treatment or disappearing act. There's a lot of different names for this. But basically what it is when the other person just completely shuts down. So both covert narcissists and people that are dismissive avoidant do tend to stonewall, but the reasons are actually very different. So covert narcissist uses stonewalling or the silent treatment is a way to usually punish their partner for inflicting some sort of narcissistic injury. As a reminder, narcissistic injury is when you inflict a wound on a narcissist that kind of pierces past that false self and kind of into their real self, which they don't like that part of them. And covert narcissists do stonewall more than their cousins, the overt narcissists, who are more likely to get loud and angry. Dismissive avoidance, when they stonewall, it's actually more of a self-protection mechanism for them. And usually this stonewalling or distancing, because this really is a distancing strategy for dismissive avoidance, occurs after a moment where they have felt more vulnerable. That's why sometimes when people are in relationships with people that have this attachment style, they get really confused. They'll be like, we had a great night, we had a really good conversation, a deep conversation. From my perspective, it went really, really well. And now this person won't return my phone calls. Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't. This is a very common distancing strategy from people that have a dismissive avoidant attachment because they got their vulnerability buttons pushed a little bit. It kind of triggered those subconscious wounds that someone with a DA attachment style has way, way, way deep down inside. Distancing or stonewalling or the silent treatment isn't necessarily aimed at hurting the partner. It is a way to keep themselves feeling safe. Another difference between covert narcissists and people with a DA attachment style is the need for attention and validation. Now, while dismissive avoidants, they might like to feel validated. I think we all do. We like compliments from other people. We like to hear that we do a good thing. It isn't like a maladaptive need for them. Where for a covert narcissist, it is a need, it's a maladaptive need because they're unable to do it for themselves. Covert narcissists crave attention just as much as grandiose or overt narcissists do, but the way they go about getting it is a little bit different. And I'll link my video below too that I made on covert narcissists, or I've made a couple videos on covert narcissists that I'll link below for you guys so you can check more of that out. But the short version, covert narcissists still like to be the center of attention. They still like to be heard and externally validated. The way that they go about this, where an overt narcissist is probably gonna be like, hey, look at me, look how awesome I am, look what I did. A covert narcissist is way more likely to play the victim. They use the victim card as a way to get attention from other people or to get other people feeling sorry for them. For example, a covert narcissist might use something like illness to really get attention, get people feeling sorry for them. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick. How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do that? Help me, help me. Really, the ultimate end goal is getting attention. Narcissists, all of them, need and require attention. Dismissive avoidants, on the other hand, typically don't like to be the center of attention. Again, they're dismissive and avoidant. They'd rather not be in the spotlight. They don't really like that sort of thing. Sure, they like compliments, they like feeling good, they like being told that they do good work or they've done a good job at something. But they don't typically need attention like a narcissist does. Dismissive avoidants in general are really, really good at meeting their own needs. Is actually where they can kind of run into trouble in relationships because they're so independent that they don't ever rely on someone else to meet their needs for them, and this can actually cause a lot of conflict in interpersonal relationships. The other person usually interprets that as feeling unwanted or unworthy. Narcissists, not so good at meeting their own needs. Another big difference, kind of slightly related to what I just talked about, is feeling important or self-importance. Narcissists in general, they need to feel important. They're often very entitled. Covert narcissists, no different than that. They want to feel important. It might be more of a passive importance, but they still like to feel very important. And this is a maladaptive need for importance too. It's not just like, hey, yeah, I want to feel good. I want to feel like I matter. No, they need to feel important. Our dismissive avoidant, sure, they might like to feel like they matter, but again, it's not going to be like a maladaptive need to feel important. Another big trait that's different between covert narcissists and people with dismissive avoidance is jealousy. Narcissists as a whole, covert narcissists no different. They tend to be very, very jealous people. They get jealous of when people have things that they don't, or they have things that they want. Dismissive avoidants, they don't usually get too jealous, nothing that would be above and beyond what a normal amount of jealousy might be. Jealousy for a narcissist, that is one of the key features in most narcissists that I've met. The last thing that I want to cover is psychological manipulation. Narcissists and covert narcissists, they use a lot of strategies to manipulate sources of supply, people in their life. They want control. They usually want some degree of power and influence over other people, especially overt narcissists, but covert narcissists do too. They just do it a different way. That need for control is where we see things like the gaslighting behavior. So we see the abusive behaviors come out, the emotional abuse, the stalking, all of those bad behaviors that we think about when we think about an emotional abuser or a narcissist. Those come out as a need for them to control their environment. People that are dismissive avoidant aren't necessarily really trying to control their environment in the same way a narcissist is. They're more trying to use methods of self-protection. Because of that, because of this need to protect themselves, they do sometimes display behaviors that are very hurtful to their partners, pushing them away and not letting them in. Verbal abuse can happen in these types of relationships with dismissive avoidance. Kind of that idea I'm going to hurt you before you have the ability to hurt me. So a lot of the times dismissive avoidance, they'll do things that hurt their partners in hopes that their partner will actually make the choice to leave them. And they do all of this to keep themselves safe, where a narcissist, They're usually far more manipulative, for one, and two, they do it to really keep that control over their supply and in their environment. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you. Again, if you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one.